In my previous video about the Idaho quadruple homicides, I compared the murders to Ted Bundy, which, now in hindsight, while there are differences, the similarities are quite striking. Even his physical appearance, honestly, it's uncanny.
The suspect is currently in jail in Pennsylvania. His defense attorney says the suspect plans to waive his extradition hearing as he is eager to be exonerated, which is why he wants to expedite being transported to Idaho.
Before pronouncing the sentence, Judge Edward Cowart let Bundy make a statement.
I'm not asking for mercy, for I find it somewhat absurd to ask for mercy for something I did not do. So I will be tortured for and will suffer for and receive the pain for that act. But I will not share the burden for the guilt.
This is Bryan Kohberger, the man law enforcement claim is responsible for the murders. A student at a nearby college, getting his doctorate in criminology, Bryan was a devout, rather eccentric vegan who refused to so much as eat food that had been cooked in a pan that had ever been used to cook meat at any point previously. Ironically, both Maddie and Xana worked at the Mad Greek restaurant, which is seemingly one of the most popular vegan restaurants in town.
Kaylee Gonzalez's father trying to find out why the killer went after these students.
There's still more to be gathered. I think it was a restaurant or a coffee shop or something like that that put this predator on their path.
But more on that later. Recently, Bryan was extradited back to Idaho, after which his probable cause affidavit was released to the public. In short, the affidavit details Bryan's movements before the murders, which appear to show that he might have been stalking the victims in the days leading up to the actual homicides. It also suggests that Bryan turned his cell phone off during the time of the murders and back on again directly after them.
Tonight, we're learning more details about the grisly murders in Idaho. Police believe Bryan Kohberger stabbed the students to death between 4 and 4:25 that morning. But after earlier reports, the victims were likely sleeping. New court records show at least one victim, Xana Kernodle, was likely awake, getting a DoorDash delivery at 4 a.m. and minutes later was on TikTok. One of the surviving roommates hearing cries from Xana's room, then opening her own door to see that masked man coming toward her, so close she could see his bushy eyebrows before he walked past her and out the sliding glass door.
The probable cause goes into some pretty upsetting details recounted by one of the surviving roommates. She told police that she had actually heard crying from the upstairs, followed by a male's voice saying something to the effect of, "I'll help you." This same female witness watched as she saw a male matching Bryan Kohberger's description leaving the home with his face partially covered. It appears that the roommate didn't realize something had even happened. It was a party house after all. People were in and out all the time, and it's unclear if Bryan actually noticed her, but I think it's pretty obvious just how lucky that girl is to be alive. All of which only manages to somehow become more haunting when you consider that people online discovered a Reddit account called Inside Looking, which has since been removed, but that account posted details of the murders before Bryan's arrest that seemed to line up with the details listed in the probable cause affidavit. This Reddit user posted that Maddie and Xana were actually the killer's intended targets. Both girls were the ones who actually worked at the vegan restaurant. At the time the user made these posts, the vast majority of people online, along with the victim's own father, were suggesting that Kaylee was actually the intended target. The Reddit user dispelled the concept of Kaylee being the actual target by quote-unquote speculating that Kaylee no longer lived in the house and the killer most likely didn't know that both Kaylee and Ethan would be home on the night of the murders. The poster went on to speculate even more that Kaylee had been killed last and that during her murder she had actually managed to let out a scream which startled the killer, forcing him to leave the house earlier than he had originally intended. The user finished by saying that had it not been for this scream, the killer would have most likely killed the remaining roommates in the downstairs. Then, rather hauntingly, in another Reddit thread which asked the question if the killer might be monitoring the Reddit forums, this user responded with, "They are 100% in one of them."
You can see there right behind me those sliding glass doors. Authorities say that's how they believe the suspect left the home. They also say that they can use cell phone data to place Bryan Kohberger back here near the home 5 hours after the murders, around 9:20 in the morning. It was also nearly 3 more hours before that initial 911 call was made.
I mentioned in my previous video that I thought the killer was most likely not someone who had been questioned by law enforcement, mostly because there was a high likelihood that they had injured themselves during the murders, so if there was anyone with strange injuries who was associated with any of the murder victims, law enforcement would have been all over them. After the release of the probable cause, it would appear that law enforcement were actually onto Brian fairly early on in their investigation, and during his drive home to Pennsylvania with his father, he was pulled over not once, but twice in Indiana. And it's been suggested online more than once that those traffic stops were as a direct result of the FBI requesting the Indiana State Police to pull the car over and obtain body camera footage of any potentially visible injuries Brian might have had. And if that was actually the case, it was a really, really good idea.
I stopped you, man, when you were driving by me there, you're a little too close to the back of that semi. About one car between you and the back of this trailer. I'm about one car going 10 miles an hour, so I'm going 60 or 70 miles an hour. We're about 6 or 7 cars. Oh, you guys did?
Yeah, man. You said that. So.
You guys stopped by a trooper? We don't have any SUVs. It was a county guy. Was it like a black SUV?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And you thought you guys were following too closely? Okay.
What happened to WSU when my son goes to school to shoot?
Today? Well, I'm not going to give you guys another ticket or warning if you just got stopped. Just make sure you give yourself plenty of room, okay? So like I said, it's all about how fast you're going, okay? So if you're going 10 miles an hour, you only need one car. Right? If you're going, so the speed limit here is 70. If you're going 70 miles an hour, you need 7 cars. Yeah. That's the easy way to explain that. Right? Yeah. Okay. It's really, if you're in the B&B man, it says 2 to 3 seconds. All right. You guys have a safe trip.
In the video, Brian appears to have a visible abrasion on his arm, which is consistent with the type of injury you might expect from an attack like this. But at least to me, the look on Brian's face when he sees the police officer says even more than the marks on his arm, because if there was ever a poster child for someone absolutely panicking, it's Brian Kohberger in this picture. And he should be panicking, because the probable cause also detailed that the sheath of the knife used in the murders had accidentally been left behind at the crime scene by the killer, and on the button clasp of that sheath, there was a small amount of blood, Brian Kohberger's blood.
New court records reveal the reasons for his arrest. Investigators linked him to the crime scene after finding a tan leather knife sheath lying next to Madison Morgan on the bed where she and Gonsalves were found dead. That's according to the 18-page affidavit. The Idaho State Lab later located a single source of male DNA left on the button snap of the knife sheath. The document reads, authorities were able to tie that DNA to Kohberger from trash recovered from his family home in Pennsylvania.
And well, it doesn't get much more damning than that. Not only is his DNA at the crime scene, but it's on an item that was only present at the time of the murders. I just have no idea how his defense could even begin to explain something like that away. From the outside looking in, it would appear that Brian Kohberger is about to potentially face the death penalty.
Brian Kohberger appeared for a brief hearing in an Idaho courtroom today.
You have the right to the presumption of innocence. That means the state bears the burden to prove that you are guilty of this offense beyond a reasonable doubt. Death and/or imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
In conclusion, the case obviously isn't over. Brian's innocent until he's proven guilty. If he is in fact guilty, and it very much appears that he is, I just have a difficult time thinking that he started out by killing 4 people at the same time. I have a very strong feeling that this is just getting started, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if down the road it turns out that he was linked to other murders. So, if you knew Brian Kohberger or communicated with him in any way, police are asking for you to reach out to them. I've left a link in the description of this video where you can do just that. And while I believe that as time goes on, this case is only going to get darker and more bizarre, the silver lining is that there's been an arrest, because had there not been, I think that it was only a matter of time before something equally horrible, or maybe even worse, happened all over again. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching.